Welcome back to Axis of Truth on JNS. I'm Emily Schrader, and today we're breaking an explosive investigation into how the Islamic Republic of Iran's networks in the United Kingdom have been involved in the Gaza Flotilla operation through regime-affiliated supporters working alongside known Hamas operatives on British soil. Plus, we'll be speaking with researcher Ourele Tobolem, who brought forward some evidence behind this shocking story. We'll also look at how Israel's tech sector is responding to post-war challenges and the ongoing threat of radicalization in the West. Let's dig in. This week, I want to talk about infiltration and what it looks like when a terror regime builds its front lines inside your own country. Now, for years, the United Kingdom has been a soft target for the Islamic Republic of Iran's influence operations, masquerading as religious charities, cultural missions, and even human rights organizations. But as the documents that we're revealing for the first time today show, the network isn't just about words, it's about infrastructure, cyber, media, money, and yes, propaganda. At the center of this controversy is Shabir Hassanally Ali, a British-Iranian engineer trained in comm and a longtime figure of the regime's Press TV and Tasnim News. Also, the point of contact from a regime-affiliated charity in the UK, which explicitly has supported terrorism and which all evidence seems to suggest is a front for the regime itself. For more than a decade, he's been a central node in the Islamic Republic's soft power apparatus in Britain, repackaging Humanist ideology for Western audiences under the guise often of social justice. Now, in the recent police report filed to the Metropolitan Police Counterterrorism Unit, Hassanally is identified as maintaining direct contact with Zahir Birwawi, a Hamas operative based in London and a key organizer of the most recent Gaza flotillas. Now, the report documents emails in which Hassanally requests payment for hosting the Global March to Jerusalem website, the flotilla network's main platform, and claims that he, quote, knocked out two Israeli ISPs in Haifa and Tel Aviv, end quote. Documents obtained by JNS, also led by the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission, a registered charity, the Telegraph reported runs summer camps that, in their words, risk radicalizing children through Khomeini's doctrine. The Times has previously exposed him as an Islamic regime propagandist closely linked to Press TV, and now, according to Ozent analysis, Hassanally has regularly traveled to Tehran for conferences in support of the Palestinian Intifada, attended by officials from Hamas and Hezbollah, along with the regime. Now, the concern here is that this is no longer diplomatic subversion. It's operational collaboration between the IRGC's information warfare units and Hamas's media arm, run from the UK under charity status, in broad daylight. Now, of course, we knew that this is happening with the Islamic Center in England, funded by the regime, and even attempts to assassinate or kidnap Iranian dissidents on UK soil. But now there's actual documentation indicating that the Islamic regime was involved with the Gaza flotillas as well. Now, sadly, the truth is that the UK is not just a safe haven for dissidents anymore. It's become a safe haven for the Islamic Republic's enablers. If the UK government continues to look away, it won't just be hosting a regime's propaganda efforts. It will actually be aiding a lot of their activities. And continuing on that theme, clearly our big story of the week, which we can now reveal, is the evidence linking the Islamic Republic's #1 fan in the UK to the Hamas-run Gaza Flotilla operations. Now, emails that we obtained between Shabir Hassan Ali, a British-Iranian IT engineer and, of course, regime propagandist, and Hamas's Zahir Birwawi, a London-based Hamas operative, show years of collaboration in running the website for the Global March to Jerusalem, the flotilla network's main propaganda arm. Now, Hassanally even wrote in these documents that his system knocked out two Israeli ISPs in Haifa and Tel Aviv, which is actually a possible breach of UK cyber laws. He later referred to the project as a serious thorn in the side of the Zionist cult. He also negotiated payment to the tune of thousands of British pounds, on UK soil no less, in exchange for his assistance and services to Hamas operatives, even boasting about how much he helped and what a large role he had in the operation. Now, a separate report filed to the Met Police Counterterrorism Unit detailed how Hassan Ali's work placed him within a network connecting IRGC-linked media operatives and Hamas on UK territory. He was even invited to Tehran for an official Iranian conference in support of that Palestinian Intifada, attended by Khamenei himself, as well as representatives from Hamas, Hezbollah, and other proxy terror organizations, I should say, of the Islamic Republic. Now, this new evidence or newly revealed evidence suggests a formal convergence between the IRGC's influence network and the Muslim Brotherhood's Hamas wing operating from the UK. It's not really just infiltration, it's also collaboration. Now, in other news, an Iran-Israel cyber battle is going on behind the scenes. According to a recent report from CTEC, Iranian state-linked hackers have launched a wave of attacks on Israeli critical infrastructure in the past week, and supply chain companies. More than 10 different firms providing IT and digital services to Israeli businesses were targeted in what investigators describe as a supply chain breaches intended to infiltrate wider networks. Now, one of the highest profile incidents involved the Shamir Medical Center, where Iranian actors breached systems, stole data, and crossed the red line of attacking a hospital, though the disruption was contained fairly early in terms of cyber attacks. Now, the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, working with the Shin Bet and other agencies, credited rapid information sharing for avoiding a much larger digital catastrophe. But make no mistake, it isn't a quiet incident. It's part of a broader Iranian strategy to expand these cyber war capabilities against Israel and its allies as well. By targeting the supply chain providers, the Islamic Republic seeks to gain entry points into Israel's economy, healthcare, and of course, government infrastructure. For Israel, this means two things at once. First, the tech sector has to respond with even greater speed and innovation. Startups and defense firms have to develop cyber defense, AI intelligence threat detection, and resilient systems that at hyper speed. Two, the war is not just in Gaza or Lebanon, it's also digital, global, and invisible. When Iran can attack from Tehran or London or anywhere in between, Israel's tech innovators really become the front line. As one Israeli cyber startup CEO put it, our response to Hamas in Tehran is in code. In a region where aggression comes in missiles and cyber packets, Israel responds by building unbreakable networks, or at least they're working on it. Now, joining us today to break down some of this amazing story about Hassan Ali is Ourele Tobolem, a research director at the Forum for Foreign Relations. Ourele, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. There's a lot to break down on this topic, a lot of documents that we've obtained. To start, can you walk us through some of this newly revealed evidence, specifically the documents linking Shabir Hassan Ali to Zahir Birawi and the Flotilla network?
Of course. Thank you, Emily, for having me on. Well, as you've said, newly uncovered evidence shows that between August 2016 and January 2017, Mr. Shabbir Hassan Ali, yes, that's right, I know his middle name, UK-based software engineer and Islamic scholar at the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission in the UK, exchanged various emails with Mr. Zahir Birawi, who is a notorious Hamas operative and coordinator for the Freedom Flotilla movement. Now, the correspondence itself pertained to Hassan Ali's services as a server administrator for the Global March to Jerusalem website. It was a highly problematic anti-Israel protest movement that was launched in 2011, and it featured contributions from multiple Islamist terror groups. Now, Birawi has for years been recognized by Israel as a Hamas official living in the UK. And he has risen to prominence in recent months due to his involvement in this year's Flotilla Frenzy, which saw controversial figures such as climate charlatan Greta Thunberg and pro-Hamas French deputy Rima set sail for Israel and Gaza in total breach of maritime sovereignty of multiple nations. And Birawi has previously been photographed himself alongside senior figures from Hamas, including Ismail Haniyeh, the Politburo leader who was assassinated in Iran last year. Now, in 2012, Jonathan Schanzer from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies identified the numerous associations of the Global March to Jerusalem Movement Central Committee with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic regime in Iran. It was actually reported at the time that the project's board secretary was the late Hossein Sheikh al-Islam. who was a Khomeinist politician. Some might remember him as one of the militants who took part in the hostage-taking of 66 American citizens at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November 1979. Now, as to the emails that I've recovered, these unmistakably show financial negotiations between Shabir Hassanally and Zahir Birawi for maintaining Hamas-linked online infrastructure. Now, in this correspondence, Hassanally boasted of cyber operations such as downing Israeli internet service providers, implying offensive cyber activity on UK soil. Now, this may actually amount to a significant breach of the Computer Misuse Act 1990, which is a piece of legislation in the UK that is meant to prevent individuals from engaging in nefarious acts involving a computer. Hassanally's admission seems to amount more to a violation of Section 3ZA, but again, that's up to any authorities to decide. But it is very clear that he did attempt to damage human welfare or national security of any country, and that includes the State of Israel. Now, funnily enough, it seems from the actual correspondence that Hassanally and Birawi had a falling out during this period, and that Hassanally's demands for compensation to the tune of £4,435.72 from Hamas were never actually met. So the server itself was decommissioned shortly after the end of this email chain, and it remains unclear whether Hassanally actively took money from Hamas during the time that he was running the server. However, what is clear is that he was operating on their behalf at the request of the Islamic regime in Iran. So these exchanges are significant because they demonstrate cross-sectarian collaboration. A Shia IRGC affiliate working directly with a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood-aligned Hamas representative inside Britain. Right, this forms part of the same network that was actually recently identified in an Adkan investigation this year that exposed Hamas links to European flotilla movements led by Birawi, actually through the Palestinian Conference for Palestinians Abroad and also the Europal Forum. So that's in sum quite a lot of stuff to get into, but some really, really impressive findings.
Now, you've described this as a bridge operation or a bridge between IRGC influence operations in the UK and Hamas propaganda. Why is that, connection so significant, and what does it mean for the UK's national security?
Of course. So this correspondence itself is very significant because it confirms an operational convergence dating back more than a decade between the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and Hamas propaganda arms operating under charitable or activist cover in the UK. Now, this is not unknown to British authorities. Actually, in July 2025, there was a report by the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament on Iran that identified the regime's use of proxy networks, cyber assets, and ideological organizations to conduct deniable attacks and influence operations on UK soil. 300 pages on these operations, and curiously, no mention of Hassanally, despite the fact that he actually had received significant coverage in the Times in 2020. So I'm a bit concerned that that was an oversight. The email exchange itself illustrates exactly this kind of mechanism. There's IRGC cyber operatives who are cooperating with Hamas propagandists to influence Western audiences. There's a clear and deeply embedded IRGC Muslim Brotherhood nexus in the United Kingdom, operating at subaltern cultural and government levels, and I'll elaborate a bit on this later. Now, the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, or FIRS, which came into force in July of 2025, effectively created a two-tier registration scheme for arrangements with individuals or entities to carry out political activities on the behalf of a foreign power in the UK. The enhanced tier list currently includes Iran and Russia. FIRS was actually the product of the National Security Act of 2023. And it introduced more stringent countermeasures around potential espionage or sabotage operations occurring on UK soil. This particular case highlights many security blind spots in FIRS and charity regulation, as these actors often operate under benign labels, but they do so openly.
Now, Aurele, we know that the Islamic Republic is the sponsor, the funder of Hamas, despite the fact, of course, that Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood Sunni group and the regime is Shia. What brings these groups together in this context, and how deep is that connection, at least on the propaganda front specifically? I mean, this flotilla operation, which, as we saw, had very little actual humanitarian aid on it in the first place, was branded as nonviolent activists. So, why was Hamas involved at all? And what are they doing on a Hamas slash IRGC backed flotilla into a war zone?
Yeah, of course. Well, to answer the first part of your question, that has already received in-depth coverage from Reichman University's International Institute for Counterterrorism. Actually, in a July 2020 report led by Dr. Eitan Azani, who I'm very fortunate to know personally, he talked about the Iranian threat network and the export of the Islamic Revolution through the co-opting of Islamic practices such as da'wah, which is missionary activity. Now, the Iranian threat network itself, or ITN, thrives on pragmatic alliances across sectarian lines when anti-Western or anti-Israeli goals converge. Now, ideologically, both the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC share a commitment to the axis of resistance narrative. It's one which totally delegitimizes Israel. It opposes Western hegemony and promotes armed resistance framed as liberation. We know this all too well from all of the protest movements that have been going on across the world, especially for the past 2 years. These groups also share a vociferous desire to intimidate and ultimately exterminate the Jews. Just last week, actually, the Mossad publicly identified a senior IRGC commander, Sardar Amar, as the man responsible for a string of foiled terror plots against Jewish and Israeli targets in Greece, Germany, and Australia in the past 2 years alone. These clans strongly align with the objectives of the Muslim Brotherhood, as once articulated amazingly by their spiritual leader, the late Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who once said in a 2009 interview with the Al Jazeera media network that it was a moral imperative for Muslims to reenact the work of Adolf Hitler. Now, as for these flotilla goers, the flotilla propaganda branded non-violent activism was in reality a Hamas IRGC influence operation, as has clearly been shown by numerous in investigations. And these were designed to delegitimize Israel and launder terror branding into humanitarian imagery. Now, in other words, the IRGC and Muslim Brotherhood nexus recruits political ambulance chasers to their cause. Professional opportunists, always on the lookout for another way to proclaim their moral self-righteousness. So, for example, Hamas is actually not the only IRGC proxy with which Sweden's top sailor, Greta Thunberg, has colluded. In early January, she traveled to Algeria to meet with representatives of the Polisario Front. It's a separatist militia operating in the Moroccan Sahara that is armed by Iran and maintains strong links with Hezbollah cells globally. That the Polisario Front has a track record of recruiting child soldiers and torturing residents of humanitarian camps does not seem to bother people like Ms. Thunberg in the slightest, and why would it? She is a massive hypocrite. Hassan Ali's own emails demonstrate the farcical equivocation of these pro-axis of resistance or even pro-Palestinian activism with pro-peace positions. He refers in these emails to his support for the Global March to Jerusalem project as a thorn in the side of the Zionist cult, while boasting about cyber retaliation and the sabotage of Israeli communication systems. So, after all, what truly unites the extreme left and the Islamist camps is their shared love of unfathomable narcissism.
Now, the emails that we have date back to as late as 2016, 2017. And what really surprised me about reading through these documents is that it was like he was bragging about his involvement, clearly showing in writing how the Islamic Republic was behind this, or at least partially so. Why do you think that nothing has been done by British authorities until now on this issue?
So, Emily, you ask actually a very good question. In 2017, Hassan Ali was invited to attend the 6th International Conference on Palestinian Intifada in Tehran. I've actually obtained a copy of the invitation. This was signed by the General Secretariat of the conference, Hossein Amir Abdullahian, who was one of the individuals who was then killed in May 2024 during the helicopter crash that also claimed the life of then Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi. The conference itself featured numerous senior officials from Hamas, Hezbollah, PIJ, chief among them Naim Alsam, who currently leads the Hezbollah militia in Lebanon. Photographic evidence shows that Hassan Ali did in fact attend this conference, placing him in circles which included sanctioned actors and terrorist leaders. Now, At the time, in 2016 and 17, the prevent and counterterrorism frameworks were focused more on the domestic threat posed by Daesh, also known as ISIS, not Iranian hybrid operations. Now, to its credit, the conservative government at the time stood at the forefront of the global coalition against Daesh, committing hundreds of millions of pounds to the training of Iraqi forces, monitoring British nationals seeking to enlist in jihadist operations abroad, and disrupting the group's financial networks. Additionally, there was institutional hesitation to treat Shia networks as a security concern, compounded by charitable registration protections and fears of attracting claims of Islamophobia. Now, the parliamentary report I mentioned earlier actually does admit that the threat posed to the UK by the Islamic Republic was under-resourced, poorly prioritized, and reactive rather than strategic, with agencies treating it as below Russia and China in importance. Individuals like Hassan Ali, whose televised appearances amounted really to incoherent tirades depicting the United States and Israel as satanic, were considered lower priorities, understandably, than, for instance, the Russian operatives using Novichok on UK soil, or China's APT-10 cyber campaign targeting IT suppliers to steal trade secrets from major British firms. Now, this allowed IRGC proxies and Muslim Brotherhood actors to operate under humanitarian or religious pretexts, largely unchecked. It's likely that Hassan Ali, who appears to be of South Asian origin and was born in January 1971 in Uganda, has exploited his British citizenship to engage in activities that would have drawn far greater scrutiny from the UK immigration or counterterrorism authorities had he not held that status. Still, this remains a serious oversight, especially that a 2012 report from Reichmann's ICT identified Sheikh Shabir Hassanally as the main figure of the British Ahlul Bayt Islamic mission, describing him as a supporter of Iran's Islamic Revolution ideology and harboring intense hatred of Israel and the West. This should have encouraged British authorities to look more closely at his activities. For example, his travels to Iran in order to attend Intifada conferences. However, I have hope. Given that his passport is due to expire within a few years, it may be in the best interest of His Majesty's Home Office to decline its renewal.
Now, we know that Hassan Ali heads a charity accused of radicalizing children by the UK government. How are groups like the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission, how are they still allowed to operate under charitable status in the UK? Has any progress at all been made to hold the Islamic Republic accountable? I mean, this isn't the first time that charities that were created and funded by the regime itself were used as fronts.
Mhm. So this is actually a loophole that the IRGC have found. The Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission, whilst it states in many instances on its website that it operates with charitable activities, it's actually not a registered charity in the UK. There are multiple reports of it promoting Khomeiniist ideology and radicalizing British youth, and it still has not been forced to register its activities with the Charity Commission. A July 2025 investigation by The Telegraph actually found that the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission's youth summer camp, Camp Wilaya, funnily enough, had exposed children to pro-Iran and pro-Hamas propaganda, including symbolic glorification of the October 7th attacks. And it had also obligated girls as young as 8 years old to wear the hijab and required segregation of the sexes, all of which was, as they claimed, intended to foster a deeper connection to the Islamic faith. Now, there are ostensibly some charities that are registered, but I'll get on this a bit later. The Times in 2020 revealed that Hassan Ali had developed software for regime-backed organizations, including Press TV and Al-Alam, Iranian state propaganda channels that are currently banned in the UK, yet, as you have pointed out via Twitter, continue to operate seemingly undeterred. We saw this play out just last week during the hateful and violent protest campaign against Professor Michael Ben-Gad at City St. George's University, when masked demonstrators disrupted one of his lectures, and the footage was swiftly supplied to Press TV for maximum online amplification. Nor is this phenomenon actually strictly confined to the Islamic Republic. In late February, an Israeli-Iranian dialogue event at King's College London, featuring my colleague and friend Faiz Alavi, who you know very well, was violently shut down by pro-Palestinian activists, one who was later identified as an open supporter of Muslim Brotherhood militias in Gaza and Sudan. The footage soon appeared on Al Jazeera Egypt, falsely portraying Pfizer as a genocide supporter. One of the protesters, an Egyptian national by the name of Osama Ghanem, who is now indefinitely suspended from the university and is facing deportation, given the revocation of his visa sponsorship, has previously worked for Egyptian companies linked to the Al Jazeera media network. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. That's not the end of it. In January last year, the BBC released footage from 2020 to 21 showing participants at the Kanun Tawhid Islamic Youth Center in London chanting death to Israel during a memorial for Qasem Soleimani, the famous IRGC Quds Force commander who helped Bashar al-Assad massacre 500,000 civilians during the Syrian civil war. The clips also included online lectures from Iranian generals denying the Holocaust, calling universities battlefronts for Islamic resistance, and urging British students, I mean, stay with me on this, to end the lives of Jews and Zionists. Now, these events appear to have been co-sponsored by the Islamic Students Association of Britain, whose then secretary, British national Mohammed Hussein Atai Abadi, has been photographed alongside Ali Khamenei in Tehran. The Al Tawhid Charitable Trust, which operates the center, has not been shut down by the charity commissioner. And to the best of my knowledge, nothing has been done to even attempt to punish those involved or indeed to de-radicalize their victims. The persistence of this kind of activity reflects charity commission and Ofcom loopholes, insufficient enforcement of terror financing laws, and an absolute failure to link ideological radicalization in our universities and cultural centers to issues of wider national security.
Now, I want to ask you, Aurele, based on your research, how does this case fit into a broader pattern of Islamic Republic operations on Western soil, from foiling terror plots to disinformation networks to infiltration at universities that we've seen? How does it fit into the whole equation?
Well, look, this exemplifies Iran's hybrid warfare model. It uses ideological, cyber, and charitable fronts as part of its global threat network that is focused on the exporting of the Islamic Revolution elsewhere. Now, there have been, for example, at least 15 assassination or kidnap plots by Iran or its proxies on the UK soil since 2022. Iran's proxies, for example, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, they act as force multipliers. They spread influence and destabilization without direct Iranian fingerprints. Hassan Ali's activity falls within the cognitive warfare and interference category. He weaponizes propaganda, cyber activism, and youth outreach to undermine British cohesion and amplify anti-Israel hostility. It's also worth noting that there's no real record of how this guy gets paid. I haven't found any trace of consistent employment anywhere, and so that may be worth looking into. Further, the Iranian regime has increasingly relied on criminal networks to conduct covert operations under the guise of plausible deniability. So it's plotted attacks against US, Israeli, and Jewish targets across Europe and used criminal syndicates to assassinate dissidents. Tehran's trusted enforcer, Naji Sharifi Zindashti, operates networks spanning Iran, Turkey, the UK, and Canada. So he employed figures such as the Canadian Hells Angels to target Iranian exiles and dissidents. Turkish authorities link him to the 2020 abduction of a Swedish Iranian activist who was later executed in Iran. Now, in January 2024, Sweden's Foxtrot network, led by Rawa Majid, carried out an attack on the Israeli embassy in Stockholm on behalf of Iran. Majid has cooperated directly with Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security, MOIS. Dutch intelligence similarly reports Iran's use of Moroccan criminal clangs in the Mokho Mafia to eliminate exiled opponents, with Tehran protecting their leadership in return and killing any key witnesses. There was a very notable case in 2020, I believe, that featured this kind of cooperation. Now, Iranian influence has also seeped into Europe's digital sphere. During the 2024 Amsterdam riots, which were premeditated and intended to create serious damage and possibly kill Jews and Israelis, social media accounts linked to Tehran circulated videos of assaults on Israeli football fans. One particular Snapchat account, labeled as a government organization under the name Mr. Haq, was actually a reference to the Zaydi Shia Islamist party in Yemen, Hizb al-Haq, long associated with the Houthis, and this was among the most active. Now, in May 2025, in the UK, 3 Iranian nationals were charged under the National Security Act for aiding a foreign intelligence service and targeting journalists from Iran International in London. All of them had entered the UK claiming asylum between 2016 and 2022. It has since emerged that the Iranian embassy in London facilitates illegal travel for such refugees, issuing forms that allow secret returns to Iran in exchange for their recruitment as informants. Consider this. A hostile state is weaponizing Britain's asylum system to plant operatives on UK soil, and yet the government has done virtually nothing to stop it.
Now, finally, I want to ask you what needs to happen next? I mean, should the UK pursue designation of these groups as terror groups, or do they need stronger enforcement under the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme?
Emily, the past 2 years especially have shown me one thing, is that Islamist groups interpret half measures as proof of weakness. Incremental responses only encourage deeper infiltration and adaptation. This kind of penetration is now too advanced for gradualism. This kind of carrot stick approach that British politicians love to do. Uh, Decisive, comprehensive action right now is required. The UK has to prescribe the IRGC under the Terrorism Act, ending the legal ambiguity around its operations. Mandatory registration under the FRS scheme for organizations and individuals linked to foreign regimes must happen. This includes the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission. It also includes the Islamic Center of England, which daily broadcasts messages from Ali Khamenei in Tehran, and is also curiously located about 100 meters away from a Jewish primary school in Maida Vale. If this kind of problem persists, the government should move to close any Islamic centers that are found to be supporting IRGC activity for reasons of public safety. There is actually an international precedent for this. In July 2024, the German government shut down the Islamic Center in Hamburg over its ties to Iran and Hezbollah and its promotion of radical Islamism. As the Interior Minister at the time, Nancy Faeser, stated, the IZH served as the direct representative of Iran's supreme leader, spreading aggressive anti-Semitism and seeking to exploit the Islamic Revolution. So why should we in the UK tolerate similar activity on our soil when Germany does not? Now, if that doesn't work, several European states, including most recently Australia, have previously expelled Iranian diplomats for espionage and activities incompatible with their diplomatic status. The UK should pursue the expulsion of implicated diplomatic staff and an independent investigation into the Islamic Republic's recruitment of informants and targeting of journalists. If hostile intelligence operations are continuing to happen on UK soil, then unfortunately for the Islamic regime in Iran, the UK government must force the closure of the Republic's embassy in London. It's something that they've done in 2011 previously, when the British embassy in Iran was attacked by a mob of Basiji regime loyalists. Finally, the UK has to treat ideological radicalization as a national security threat and not merely a matter of community relations or anti-Semitism. And this applies whether it's the IRGC or the Muslim Brotherhood or any other extremist group. The horrific Yom Kippur attack in Manchester that was carried out by British-Syrian Jihad al-Shami, should have been recognized for what it was, an act of jihad. Instead, the Prime Minister's decision to dismiss it as the work of, I believe the quote was, one vile individual, trivialized the murder of 2 British Jews during a day of worship and signaled a dangerous unwillingness to confront the deeper ideological roots of such violence. The UK has to shift from crisis response to long-term deterrence. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen under the present Labour government. Let's just take, for example, David Lammy, who is now the Deputy Prime Minister to the UK following a recent cabinet reshuffle. He used to be the Foreign Secretary. David Lammy, a decade ago or so, appeared on a UK game show in which, in response to a question about who succeeded Henry VIII, the English monarch Henry VIII, he responded, Henry VII. I think that we cannot continue to reward idiocy consistently and then be surprised when we are ruled over by idiots. And so there has to be some kind of action on this front, whether that's a general election that hopefully will land us with a different government. I certainly hope so. But it's clear that we cannot go on like this.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Aurele, for your work on this important topic and for breaking down some of the findings in recent weeks. I'm sure we'll continue to see more as the months and years continue.
Thank you very much, Emily.
In any case, for now, we want to move on to our good, bad, and ugly stories of the week. As always, feel free to suggest your stories for this segment. You can DM me on X, Emily K. Schrader, and we'll do our best to get it in the show. For now, however, we'll finish up with the good, the bad, and the ugly. First things first, our good story of the week. The IDF foiled an IRGC-linked smuggling ring attempting to move drone components into the West Bank. Security sources say it was part of the regime's effort to build a micro-Hezbollah inside Judea and Samaria. And this time, they were caught red-handed. This is, of course, hardly the first time. They're also actively trying to build up Hezbollah again, which is why we've seen a continued small-scale operations targeting Hezbollah sites inside southern Lebanon. And while it's disturbing this is happening, obviously we have to applaud the idea for foiling yet another attempt to export the Islamic Republic's terror operations. And keeping to our theme of this week, British universities are still accepting funding from pro-Iranian regime foundations, some of which actually being used as fronts by the regime, and also Qatar-linked institutions, despite clear warnings from the UK government. The UK's Intelligence and Security Committee in a July 2025 report states that the Islamic Republic, quote, almost certainly conducts espionage campaigns targeting academia in the UK. And it's not just about money. It's also about access data and propaganda on campus. Sponsored research can provide regime-linked actors backdoor entry into sensitive technology, disciplines, and infrastructure, according to the UK government. If universities continue to take these funds without strict scrutiny or without declaring it, Britain's highest learning institutions risk being an unwitting front line for foreign influence and intelligence operations. And our ugly story of this week comes from, you guessed it, London, where a Hamas-affiliated cleric delivered a sermon recently praising the martyrs of the sea, his words, referring to that Gaza Flotilla operations inside an Islamic center linked to the Ahlul Bayt network. That's that same network connected to Shabir Hassan Ali's charity and the Islamic Republic of Iran's propaganda machine. It's also received more than £400,000 in UK government funding under the guise of community cohesion. Now, this was exposed by The Times in July 2025, and the incident shows how the Islamic Republic's ideological infrastructure in the UK is bleeding radicalization and even recruitment on British soil, unfortunately using taxpayer money to promote this Khomeinist propaganda. Well, that's it for this week on Axis of Truth. We'll be back soon with more interviews and more stories from the Middle East. We'll continue to keep you updated on the latest from this story as the new documentation sheds light on the partnership between Hamas and the Islamic Republic of Iran. I'm Emily Schrader. Be sure to follow me on social media, Emily K. Schrader or Emily in Tel Aviv. Thank you for watching and see you next week on Axis of Truth.